Okay. All right. Before I get started, there is a handout that I would like to have passed out that we are going to go through. And at various times during this morning's sermon, I am going to need to get some feedback from you. So we'll have a mic going around as well. So don't just sit there and think you're going to be listening to a sermon. I'm hoping that you'll be engaged as well. Well, that is being handed out. Let's see. There they are. Very good. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to start with a story. He was a young man, very, very talented, handsome, actually very, very brilliant, really. Had a wonderful future in front of him. He was the top of his class. He was still only in his late teens. Came from a fine family. He was being prepared for an important position in government. You might say that he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. But then it all came crashing down, literally. And we read about his story in the first chapter of Daniel, chapter 1. It says, in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord delivered Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, along with some of the articles from the temple of God. These he carried off to the temple of his God in Babylonia and put in the treasure house of his God. Then the king ordered Ashpenaz, the chief of his court officials. Now, if you have the King James Version or the New King James Version, what does it say about Ashpenaz and his title? He was the chief of the eunuchs. So his job was to bring into the king's service some of the Israelites from the royal family and the nobility. Young men without any physical defect, handsome, showing aptitude for every kind of learning, well-informed, quick to understand, and qualified to serve in the king's palace. Now, I can imagine as Daniel was on that trip to Babylon, that one of his companions coming up to him and saying, doesn't the prophet Isaiah tell us something about what is happening to us? And I can picture Daniel quoting Isaiah 39, verses 5 through 7, which was Isaiah's prophecy to Hezekiah. Then Isaiah said to Hezekiah, hear the word of the Lord Almighty. The time will come when everything in your palace and all of your predecessors have stored up until this day will be carried off to Babylon. Nothing will be left, says the Lord. And some of your descendants, your own flesh and blood, who will be born to you, will be taken away, and they will become eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon. Daniel was among those who fulfilled this prophecy. It was about a 900-mile trip from Jerusalem to Babylon. When you consider the terrain, it probably would have taken 3 to 4 months to get there. He made the trip in chains, walking. And during that time, Daniel had a lot of time to think about what he was going through. Would you consider these to be negative events? It's hard to put a positive spin on what was happening to Daniel, right? He was taken captive by a foreign king. He would never see his family ever again. In a few months, he would be castrated. We're not talking about a voluntary vasectomy here, right? There's no reversal from being a eunuch. He would never marry. He would never have any children. Put yourself in Daniel's position. If you knew all of these things and you were traveling to Babylon, what kind of negative thoughts would be going through your head? Would you have any negative thoughts? Okay. I'd like for somebody, if they have a mic, I would like to find out what are some of the negative thoughts that would be going through your head if you were in Daniel's position going from Jerusalem to Babylon. Anyone have any idea? What kind of thoughts would be going through your head? Anybody? Any volunteer? Okay. Yeah, we got a mic here. It's coming around.
Oh,
okay. You got your mic.
Yeah.
Okay.
The king, what was his name? Jehoiakim?
Jehoiakim.
Yeah, Jehoiakim. Yeah, he did a really bad job.
The king did a really bad job. You know, if you read the story, there were quite a few kings that had done a bad job. But yes, the king did a really bad job. There's a thought. King did, I'm going to write these down because we're going to come back to these. The king did a really bad job. Okay? Any other thoughts that might go through your head?
You know, I assume that Daniel was in his late teens, early 20s, and they know they're going to be in Babylon for 70 years. So he's probably thinking, man, I'm going to be old by the time I come back, if I ever come back alive. But what about my education? What about my career? What about my future family? Oh, which I cannot have anymore.
That's done with. Yeah. Yes. So if I come back alive, I'm going to be really old. Okay. Anyone else?
I think the castration thing would probably be the main thing he was thinking about, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I think it would be a big one for me, yes.
And I think I'd be like, why isn't the king getting castrated? Why am I?
Yeah, why is this happening to me and not back to the king who didn't do such a great job, right? Why me, right? Anyone else? There's three. Why me? If I come back alive, I'm going to be really old. The king did a really lousy job. What's that? So thinking, I don't know if I want to go on, right? I don't know if I want to go on. One more.
Fear of losing his relationship with God because of all the external evil that he's about to go into.
Yeah. Do I have a relationship with God at this point? Why is this happening, right? Yeah. Where's God? Okay. So there, we've got 5 of them. We're going to come back to these. I've got the king did a really lousy job. If I come back, I'm going to be really old. Why me? I don't know if I want to go on at all. You know? I wish I would have been killed in Jerusalem, right? Where's God? Is there a God? Right? What's going to happen? We'll come back to these in a moment. In due time, Daniel and his companions arrive in Babylon. Ashpenaz, the master of eunuchs, takes these young men. He teaches them the language and the literature of the Babylonians. The king assigns them a daily amount of food and wine from the king's table. They were to be trained for 3 years, and after that, they were to enter the king's service. Among those who were chosen were some from Judah: Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The chief official gave them new names: to Daniel, the name Belteshazzar; to Hananiah, Shadrach; to Mishael, Meshach; and to Azariah, Abednego. And we know the rest of the story. Daniel remains faithful to God. His life was tough. It was filled with challenges and obstacles, but he showed the ability to stand firm in the face of adversity, to keep moving forward even when the odds were against him. Daniel didn't just survive, he thrived, not only during the Babylonian Empire, but also during the Persian time, right? What was the secret of Daniel's success? It didn't come by chance. It wasn't that somehow he was better than others. The key is a verse in Daniel chapter 1, verse 8. It says that he purposed in his heart. That phrase is key. Daniel was faced with a situation that many would have found overwhelming. He was taken into captivity, surrounded by a foreign culture. It didn't honor God. He was pressured to abandon his beliefs. He was given a new name so that he would forget his culture. But instead of giving in, Daniel made a conscious, determined decision. He purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the king's food and drink. We call what Daniel had resilience. The word resilience means the capacity to withstand, to recover quickly from difficulties. In a word, it means toughness, the ability to bounce back. So today, I want to talk to you about developing resilience through a strong sense of purpose. Like Daniel, learning how to manage our thoughts so that we can stay focused on our goals. How did Daniel succeed in the face of tremendous pressure? How can we build that kind of resilience that will help us navigate through the struggles that we face today? I believe that the first step to building resilience is understanding what's important to us. So I'd like for you to take a moment in the handout that you have. In the middle of the page, we'll take a look at the top in a moment. But in the middle of the page, I have a place for you to write your top 5 values. I'd like for you to write down the 3 to 5 things that are more important to you than anything else in the world. No one else has to look at these, and I'm not asking you to make a contract here. So if on the way home you discover, oh, no, I missed that one, this one should go in there, you can change these, all right? But for right now, I'd like for you to put 3 to 5 things that are more important to you than anything else in the world. And while you're doing that, I'd like for us to spend a moment thinking about Daniel. What do you suppose Daniel's 3 to 5 top values were? When we look at his life, we don't know them all, but I think we could probably get at least 2 of them pretty close. What was important to Daniel? Just go ahead and shout it out. What was important to Daniel? His relationship with God. Okay, we'll put that one down. Relationship to God. What's that? It goes that relationship with God. What else? Representing God. His relationship with God. Representing God. What else was important to Daniel, do you suppose? His health, yes. That was clear. His health. Sarah, I saw your hand. You were going to say health too. Yeah. Okay, so relationship with God, representing God, his health. What would be some other things that would be important? Shannon. His relationship to others. Okay. Anything else? Not compromising. Okay. So his principles were important to him. Okay? So there we have 5. Now, hopefully you have 3 to 5 on your list. And I think it is important for us to be clear on what our values are. Because if we're not clear on our values, if we don't know where we're going, if I leave the house in my car and I'm not going anywhere, when I come to the end of the driveway, does it matter if I turn left or right? It doesn't, because I'm not going anywhere, right? So any direction is a good direction because I don't have any direction. But this morning when I got up, I knew I was speaking here at Arbuckle View. And so when I come to the end of the driveway, I know that there's a certain way that gets me here faster than others. Now, I know at least 2 or 3 different routes that I could take, but there's one that gets me here faster. So now, with a direction, I can choose which way to turn. Some ways will get me there faster than others. And so I believe that our values, when we are clear on our values, then our behavior matters. The problem many people have is any behavior is a good behavior because they don't have any direction, right? So whatever feels good at the moment, I'll go that direction. But the moment you have a destination, your behavior matters. So the first step is to be clear on where you're going. In fact, there is a whole therapy out there that's called acceptance commitment therapy, which is about helping people identify what their core values are, committing to those values regardless of what is happening in your life. And so I've been in the habit for the last probably about 20 years. I used to carry them in my pocket. I now know what they are. I know what my top 5 values are. And so when there's a major decision to be made, whether it involves my career or my family, I will immediately take a look at my values and say, okay, which decision is going to get me more of what I really want out of life? Which decision is more likely to get in the way of what is important to me? And making decisions based upon I call it values-based decision making. Not just what I feel like at the moment. What is important to you? That becomes the guidepost for the direction of your life. So resilience starts with knowing what matters most to you and committing to those values no matter what the circumstances. So when the world around you is shifting and pulling you in all sorts of directions, you remain committed to what's most important to you. And that can give you strength to stand firm. I've been thinking this past week about being created in the image of God. And what does that mean? Oftentimes, think, well, I look in the mirror and do I get a picture of God? I don't think it's so much about my physical looks. Yeah, I think I have mentioned this before, but I'm going to mention it again. Back in the 90s, there was a biologist by the name of Robert Sapolsky who wrote a book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And he was interested, he was spending time in Africa, and one of the things he found fascinating was that animals like zebras live a highly stressful life, but they don't get ulcers and they don't have stress-related diseases. And he was fascinated. Why don't they get these? Human beings, they're very common, but they don't get them. Think about this. You're a zebra on the savannah, and you're grazing contentedly. At any moment, a lioness can come start chasing you. And he observed this. The lioness would chase the herd of zebras until they would catch one of them. The lioness now has supper for the pride. And within 10 to 15 minutes, the rest of the herd are back grazing on the savannah as if nothing happened. Now, my guess is that if a lioness was wandering wildly here in the sanctuary, chasing us, when it caught one of us and had its lunch, 15 minutes later, we would not be back here in the sanctuary continuing our service as if nothing happened. Because there's a difference between us and zebras. You see, zebras don't go down to the library and check out books to read about other zebras. They don't watch movies about other zebras. They don't write songs about other zebras. They don't write poems about other zebras. I would suggest that what makes us the image of God is that we are storytellers. And those stories enable us to connect with each other. Or they connect us with certain people and other people, well, our stories just don't match, right? Think about it. God is a storyteller. We have his story right here, from Genesis to Revelation. And we as humans tell these wonderful stories, which enables us to meet together and listen to a sermon. It enabled us to be able to create a building like this, to create automobiles to travel in. So there's a wonderful benefit to our ability to tell stories. But there's also a downside to storytelling. Because unlike the zebra, we don't just go back, we don't just live in the now. When bad things happen, that becomes part of our story. What do we do with that? We as humans have a unique ability to think. Our brain spits out lots of thoughts. But I would suggest to you this morning that simply because our brain spits out thoughts doesn't mean that we think. Okay? All right? To say that my brain spits out thoughts is like saying that my heart beats. Okay? Our brain simply spits out information. Thinking is what we choose to do with the information that our brain spits out. Now, before I go too much further into this, I want to be careful here. I want to be very careful here. You know, when somebody's having a heart attack, we don't tell that person to get their heart together. Right? Because the heart's the problem, right? They need help. But when people are struggling emotionally, we sometimes will tell people, get your act together. Well, think of how foolish that is. We're asking them to use the same brain that's causing them problems to get themselves together. You know, one of the things I really enjoy working in the area of mental health. I've been doing it for almost 30 years now. But one of the things that's always frustrated me is that we separate mental health from medical help. Because the last time I checked, my brain was inside my body. And just like the heart and the pancreas and the kidneys can go wrong, things can go wrong with the brain. But we expect the person who's having a problem with their brain to get their thoughts together. It's a problem. It's not just a mental health problem, it's a medical problem as well. Now, there is a difference between the brain and other organs in our body. The one that we talked about that makes us in the image of God. And it has this unique ability to spit out information. And I don't think that we spend enough time teaching people how to use their brain. We have classes on math, we have classes on history, we have classes in English. We don't teach people how to think. And I think there's this fear that some people have. If we teach people how to think, we'll brainwash them, but it's just the opposite. When we don't teach people how to think, we set them up to be brainwashed. Right? I believe it because so-and-so said it. Our brain spits out information, but it's important that we choose which thoughts to latch onto and which thoughts to let go. I'm not sure that we have control to keep every thought out of our head, but we do have a choice as to what we do with the thoughts that pop into our head. Is this a thought I keep? Is this a keeper? Or is this a thought I let go? Because it's not going to get me anywhere. How do we choose? Martin Luther, many, many years ago in 16th century, said that you can't keep the birds from flying overhead, but you can keep them from making nests in your hair. And that's the way it is with our thoughts. You can't keep thoughts from coming into your head. Your brain just spits out thoughts. But you don't have to make every thought a permanent place in your head. Some you let go, some you keep. So how do you choose? I want to give you this morning a formula that you can use to decide whether a thought that you have is worth keeping or a thought is something that you probably need to let that one go because it's not going to get you anywhere good. It's a little acronym that I call AFROG. All right? The A stands for, does this thought help me stay alive? If a thought helps you stay alive, don't give it up. You know, for example, I have this belief, this thought, that when I come to the side of the road, before crossing, it would be very useful for me to look both ways before I cross that street. I'm not going to change that thought because it helps me stay alive. Now, the reality is most thoughts don't help us stay alive. If we change them, we'll stay alive. So let's take a look at the thoughts that Daniel could have had on his way to Babylon. Someone said he had the thought that the king did a really, really lousy job. If Daniel changed that thought, would he die? No. He wouldn't die if he gave up that thought, right? Okay? So that tells me that that's a thought that's a candidate to be changed or let go. Okay? If I come back alive, I'm going to be really old. If I change the way I look at that, would I die? No. So that's a candidate. Why me? This is horrible. This is awful. If I give up that thought, would I still be alive? I could still stay alive and change that thought. I don't know if I want to go on. Now think about that. Does that thought keep you alive? It's the opposite, right? That's the opposite. So there's a candidate for change. God has given up. God is nowhere. Does that keep us alive? No. Okay? So does this thought keep me alive? That's the first thought. The second thought, second question, does this thought make me feel better? Does this thought make me feel better? Okay, not that feelings are the end all of everything, but we want thoughts that are going to make us feel good about our existence. The R is this thought based on reality? What's the evidence that would support this thought? Is it based on reality? The O, does this thought help me get along with other people? And the G, does this thought help me achieve my goals or my values? So if we were Daniel, and we have these thoughts, let's apply these. There's at the very bottom, there's a place, there's thoughts that keep us stuck, and then there's a place for replacement thought. Now there's two very different schools of thought in counseling about what to do with our thoughts. Acceptance commitment therapy encourages us to, thoughts that are not helpful, rather than trying to change them, is to accept them and let them go. Okay? Think of it kind of like a bubble. Just kind of let it float away. That thought just is not worth spending a lot of energy in. Then there's rational emotive behavioral therapy, which is where I've had most of my training, and that is you challenge the thought and you replace it with a more useful thought. Either way, whatever way is helpful for you. So let's think of Daniel's thoughts that could have kept him stuck. We start with the one: the king did a really lousy job. Well, let's apply this. We already said that thought doesn't keep Daniel alive, right? Do you suppose that thought would make Daniel feel better? What's the emotions that he would likely experience if he fed this thought that the king really did a lousy job? Anger would be, what's that? Resentment, a desire for revenge, right? Okay, so it didn't make him feel better. Is it based on reality? Well, yeah, there's some evidence that the king did a really lousy job, but sometimes it doesn't matter, right? We're still stuck with what we got regardless, right? Would that thought help Daniel get along with other people? So once he gets into Babylon, if that's his dominant thought, where's his energy going to be? What's it going to be? What a lousy king. We're here because of him. Look what's happened to our life, right? More bitterness and resentment, right? Does this thought help me achieve my goals? Well, this is where our values come in. So we identified, would this thought help Daniel's relationship with God in any way? No. Would it help him represent God there in Babylon? No. Would it make him healthier? No. Would it improve his relationship with other people? He's going to be looking for people who are willing to spend their time complaining about the stupid king that we had that got us in this mess, right? And as far as not compromising his principles, it certainly would not help him there. So what would be a more helpful thought for Daniel than thinking that the king did a really lousy job? What would be a more helpful thought? How could you reword this thought so that it is now helpful for him? The solution is always harder than the problem, right?
We need to make sure not to do the same thing this king did.
Well, definitely that. You could also look at, we get to be a part of the fulfillment of prophecy. Now, not that this is the prophecy that I want to be a part of, but think about it. I'm here in the king's court. I can still represent God here. In fact, this might be even a better place to represent God than in a place that everybody already knew God. Right? I'm not telling you that thinking right is easy. It's a challenge. Right? What about this thought, if I come back alive, I'm going to be really old? You can apply this again. Would that make him feel better? No. All right. Is it based on reality? Yes, that is the reality. If you're still alive, you're going to be very old. Would it help him get along with other people? Yeah, if he was putting it in the positive, is I'm planning to be around when this happens, right? I have a lot of experience. Yeah. Whenever you have a thought that gets you stuck, ask yourself these questions. Is this thought going to keep me alive? Is it going to make me feel better? Is it based on reality? Is it going to help me get along with other people? Is it going to help me achieve my goals? And that you need to be very clear. You've got your values that I've had you put these down. But I'd encourage you to be thinking about, what are your goals for those values that you've written down? I have 5 key values. I'll just share with you quickly how I do this. So, not necessarily in this order. My core values are my family, my physical health, my emotional health, my spiritual health, and my financial health. And for each one of those, I have a specific goal that I say, if I can do this every day, it's going to help me with this value. So for my family, I want to connect with Sarah every day. I want to connect with my children at least once a week. I want to connect with my dad and my sisters at least once a month. And so every day, I'm thinking, what am I doing that will connect with my family? Okay? My physical health. Some of you who know me from Lifestyle Center of America, anybody know what my physical goal is? My goal is to walk 5 miles every single day. Because my big goal is on my 100th birthday, I want to walk 5 miles with my family. Okay? That's my goal on my 100th birthday. Now, I might be able to do it in heaven and we can make it like 50 miles then, right? But I don't want to just live a long time. I want to be able to get around and do things, right? So that's my goal every single day. I've got to get at least 5 miles into walking, right? And then I have one for each one of my values. And so when I have thoughts that come in that kind of lead me in the wrong direction, I say, okay, how is this going to help me with my goals? Is this a thought that I need to let go? Or is this a thought that I need to latch onto? And what I find is most of my thoughts are not worth keeping, to be honest. Lots of them I think, okay, all right, that's nice, but I'm not paying any attention to you. because you're not going to get me where I want to be. I believe Daniel was successful because the key word in that Bible passage was clear. What did it say? He purposed. He made a firm decision. This is what I'm going to do. And any thought that interfered with that, it's not worth spending time with. And I believe this is why he spent time on his knees praying, because our brain is just an instrument that spits out information, right? Don't believe everything you think. Don't. You believe everything you think, you're going to be in trouble, right? Apply these principles, and you'll have a longer, more resilient life. We'll look at more of these. You know, I started preaching these, and there's a lot of other Bible characters in there that show the same resilience. And I tried to put them into one sermon, but we'd be here all afternoon. We'll look at some of the others next time, all right? Let's close with a word of prayer. Dear Father, we thank you for your love for us. We thank you for the gift of life that you've given to us. We thank you for a church family. We thank you that you have given us this wonderful, marvelous ability to create stories, and that we share these stories in words, in music, in poetry, in books. And Lord, help us to use these stories in a way that uplifts you and uplifts each other. We pray in Jesus' name, amen.